There we go. I think we're live, guys. I'm so sorry about that. And hopefully I'll get an email telling me that it is working, because I can't tell. I'm going to hit the chat thing, and maybe somebody can say that they can actually see me. Sorry, that was my fault. I had a little bit of a meltdown with my iPad. So I'm hoping you can hear me and you can see me. And I'm getting a few hellos from Knots and from Texas and from Germany and from Norway. This is crazy, guys. Thanks for joining. Yeah, let's get into it. There's nothing to throw your balance on getting something started than having a meltdown, a technological meltdown. I think I'll just start by turning on my little light there, which I'm lighting myself with my Harlow light, which I love this gear so much, but we'll get into that a little bit later and how I use it. I guess, this is always a little bit difficult for me, because talking about myself feels a little bit self-aggrandizing, and I don't like doing that. I sort of tend to like to be under the radar a little bit with everything I do in life. But what I do like to do is offer stories that will give people inspiration and hope that you can achieve cool things in your life if you really just are passionate about them. And I think with photography in particular, you really have to approach it from a point of view, and I assume everybody that's here is like that, because I'm not here to tell you how to make money. I'm still trying to figure that bit out myself. You have to really be passionate and in love with photography, and everything else will flow from that. I actually started very late in life as a photographer, in my 40s to be precise, and I actually had a former life as doing wedding videos for a short while, and that was very interesting times. Weddings can be very enjoyable things to be working on, and not so enjoyable things to be working on. But what I've always told young people who are interested in learning photography and may not have the desire to go to school or do anything like that is shoot weddings. Weddings, aren't exactly a glamorous thing. They're considered a very low tier form of photographic expression, from what I've experienced with people anyway. But they are a situation where you have very little control over anything. You have a control over what you do, but you don't have control over weather. You don't have control over how beautiful your location is, or how good a mood your client is in, or cooperative, time, whether everything is against you. And you still need to come up with images that are worthy of the cover of a magazine. So if you go out and do half a dozen of those with friends, family, whatever, on the cheap, and you can get to being okay at mastering that, when you're in the comfort and ease of a studio or a location with a subject where you're shooting your own creativity at your own pace, then that will be so easy in comparison to doing weddings. But I did wedding videos for a while, and then through some personal adversity, I went to clear my brain. I just got a retail job, and this was kind of in my late 30s, mid to late 30s. And essentially I was selling video cameras to those couples that were, the honeymoon couples. I worked in a store, if you're from Australia, you'll know a place called JB Hi-Fi, a big sort of electronics department store, very much like Best Buy in America. I'm sure there are European equivalents as well. And, I think what I learned from that, the big takeaway from working retail is there is no, you just really can't quantify how important human kindness is, and I always took interest in my clients that bought things from me, who, because of my work in the wedding video area and so forth, I had a bit of expertise, technical expertise. And I made a lot of friends doing that. And one of those people ended up being somebody that I really looked after because they came in and bought a lot of equipment for their work, So, I would always sort of get extra things for them and so forth. And that person ended up being a publicist for Warner Brothers and would give me tickets to movie premieres. And I would get to go to these kind of almost like get to walk the red carpet and go to the after parties and things like that. Just as a guest and a nerd and a lover of film and television, When I never really thought about taking up photography because even at that part of my life, I had terrible eyesight, degenerating eyesight. I suffer from a condition called keratoconus, which is a severe distortion of the cornea. So being a photographer that would need to go out and actually focus a camera was not an option until Canon released their first kind of affordable DSLR. I think it was the 10D. It cost a small fortune. I thought, okay, I'm going to buy this and actually have some fun with photography and use it to develop towards another passion that I had, and that was for music. Not being focused enough to learn how to play music, I found that I could find a way of working with that world by being a photographer. So with my first Canon, I went out and started taking pictures of bands in pubs. That's essentially the first thing I started doing. And that, hunting a shot in a live concert situation is a really, really difficult thing to do because your artists are constantly on the move, pulling terrible faces to get that vocal expression, and in a changing, terrible lighting situation. So, I learned very quickly you have to really hunt that shot, take a lot of images. My work as a set photographer versus a live music photographer, very different. You're shooting at 15 plus frames a second at a concert. I shoot a lot more meticulously in portrait shoots and on film sets. So that's where I kind of started to learn the beauty of, the adversity of not having any control over the lighting situation and shooting into light, and the joy of looking through hundreds and hundreds of photographs of what you would consider kind of trash and finding just that one or two stunning images that then just really lifted your heart. And that became very addictive. It was kind of like this this great sort of adrenaline from going through and going, this is terrible, and then finding that one amazing photograph that you could then present to the artist, and they would fall in love with that and want to use it for their album or whatever. At the same time that I was doing that, I started taking this Canon to these film premieres and taking pictures of the actors over my shoulder on the red carpet and presenting them to the person that would give me the tickets to these movies. And she kind of liked what I was doing, and from there I started being hired as the internal kind of red carpet photographer for Warner Brothers and Village Roadshow. And that just came from me just saying, hey, here's some photographs of your event, thanks for the invitation. And the next thing I know, I'm still working my day job, getting paid $300 to go and shoot on the red carpet. And I really enjoyed that, because then I started trying to hunt that really special shot on the red carpet, like really get something that was a little bit different to with that cool access angle that I had. And from there, I just kept on shooting and shooting and shooting, looking for aspiring young actors on Facebook and offering my services for free, and just learning to shoot single people who had their focus on me, not having the wherewithal to learn photography, learn lighting, strobes, all that stuff sounded so complicated to me. And what the great thing about digital was, you could see, and the continuous light of the sun was what you see is what you get. So all my first photo shoots in Melbourne and Geelong, and then when I started traveling just on holidays to America, or you can see this really distinct sort of thing where if you look at 5 years of my entire body of work, it's all outdoors. Everything is outdoors. Everything is lit by a 2 light source, the sun and a bounce. So I would always have a friend come along, bounce that, use a like a circular bounce disc. And I learned that I loved shooting into the light, so I loved using the sun as the rim lighting for the subject and the bounce as the main light. Once I started to meet people in America, and shoot and just make friends, I just sort of started escalating at the level in the industry that these actors would be, and word of mouth got around, and I think probably the most important thing that I learned was that you really need to connect with your subject. You really need to love what you're doing, and you really need to. This happened to me the other day on the show that I'm working on at the moment. Is that I wasn't even aware of what I was doing, but the actor said, "I just love how excited you're getting about these shots," because I was seeing this incredible lighting, and I was obviously saying things that, were sort of notable to the person. So that passion really connects you with the subject, So you have to not be too stoic about it, and just be really enjoying the moment when you're getting great work, and let that person know. I think the feedback of having a great shot and being able to show the person on the back of the camera immediately, I was very much against that in the early days. Now it is a great tool to actually get your subject excited and even more involved in what you're doing for them. Then they start, rather than just being a sort of like a quiet subject, they start getting ideas and getting excited about those ideas. So I just learned to hunt light, because I was just using the sun or using the window, using concrete as a fill. And I think the way I kind of developed that curiosity of light was my passion for movies as well. I couldn't go to a movie and really get involved in the story that much the first time I watched it, because I would be constantly looking. Probably can't do this anymore with digital. They retouch everything out in post. But in the older days, in films like Blade Runner and all these films, I would want to go and sit, third row back and be as close to the screen as possible and look into the subject's eyes and try to determine the light sources reflected in their eyes, and I could see, okay, there's a big master light here, or there's 2 lights here, or they're using, slivers of kino flows and things like that. And, I kind of figured if you can shoot a big movie with continuous light, obviously you can shoot stills with continuous light. So I never really learned the technicalities of strobes. They're still kind of unknown to me. I just look and paint with continuous light, and that was the second phase of my career as a photographer. Was I went from just going outdoors and everything was abundantly full of light. Eventually I ended up getting a space in Hollywood that was a bit of an event space that doubled as a studio. Black floors, black walls, black ceilings, black furniture. And it was the opposite. You started with this total darkness and you built up your subject from there. And there was just no way I could do that with strobes. Everything would be overpowered. I had no idea how to shape and paint light with a strobe. That's an art form, But with continuous lights, you could just bring up a light and just move it away and feather. And then when you were happy with this, you could bring something else in, just bring a little bit of a rim so that you could separate them from the dark background. And then you kind of see a stage 2 of my photography from about 2016 to 2017 to to 22, all my photographs, if they're, as long as they're not on set, everything I took was in the dark. I'm going to jump a little bit ahead. I've got a little presentation here. I'll see if I can get it up. I'm not sure how to do this. Here we go. Okay, so this is obviously on set with Jason on a TV series called Frontier, where we shot in minus 35, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But you know, something like this, just a single light source, and the simplicity of single light was within a confined environment was really captivating to me, because it was an extension of the simplicity of sunlight, you know, which bathed everything and gave you a completely different atmosphere. But with complete darkness, again, I worked with simplicity and just painted with the directionality of the light. And I was using, say for example, with this one, using Kino flows, and you can see in a lot of these photographs, you can actually zoom in onto the photograph and you can see the lines of the lighting, whether they're Kino flows or whether they're ring lights or whether they're bulb lights. You know, it just went from there. And kind of one of the funny things was that you know, when I started photographing Daniel Radcliffe, an extension of this work that I started in Australia and shooting, you know, red carpet, the opportunity to shoot publicity for Daniel Radcliffe for Harry Potter, because he was holidaying in Australia at the time, came up, and I wasn't given that job. I had to actually vie for that against a lot of other photographers and offer ideas and presentations. And part of that process was supplying a portfolio of work as well as your ideas. And I didn't really have a portfolio of work. Most of my stuff, you know, I had a couple of really nice portraits of some actors, but most of it was just you know, in situ photography on the red carpet and so forth. So I needed to figure out what this kid liked, you know, because I found out that his parents and he made the decision of who they want to work with, you know. So I did a little bit of research, and it looked like he loved independent music a lot. You know, there were pictures of him with guitars online. That was about it. That's all I could find, and just constant talk about his love of music. So when I submitted my portfolio of 10 images that we had to submit, I think 1 or 2 were portraits, and that was it. The rest were my completely unknown pub band photographs. And from that, he was like, yeah, we want to work with this guy. And it was that separated me from everybody showing their high level work to showing something that person loves. Of course, you know, I'm going into this shoot still fairly fresh and not really a studio guy. And one of the funny things was that that shoot and the subsequent shoots, you know, I brought strobes because I thought that's what you would have to do, and ended up actually using the modeling light from the strobes as my primary light source for all my photo shoots for Daniel. So it's whatever works for you. You know, whatever works for you is important. It's not what equipment you have to show off. You've got to have the equipment that brings you joy to use, as I always say, and gets you the results that cater to your work and your love for photography. At this stage too, I was trying to find what my style would be and what inspiration. I was trying to find what photographer I would like, you know, and I eventually kind of looked at my bookshelf and realized I had photography books on my bookshelf inadvertently, because there were books of bands that I loved, because one of my primary interests and passions was music, you know. And you know, the ones that stood out that I had multiple different books of was Anton Corbijn, and I had some Lindbergh books as well, just because of the beautiful art, you know, and I had some Annie Leibovitz stuff because I loved Arnold Schwarzenegger, and she'd taken all these iconic photographs of Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I had photography books, but I didn't buy them because they were photography books. I bought them because they were books of subject matter that I was in love with, you know. And then I started looking at Anton Corbijn's work, and there was just this beauty and perfection to this slight imperfection. You know, a lot of his images had, you know, this intensity, but, you know, a little bit of movement in them, and they weren't always dead, solid, and pin sharp, you know. And I remember reading somewhere that he had said, you know, sharpness is overrated. And I figured, well, if sharpness is overrated, then I can be a photographer too, because I have terrible eyesight, and even with an autofocus camera, sometimes you're going to miss the mark, you know. So from there, you know, these things were all happening from Australia. And I remember, and this is one of the things that maybe will, you know, gives you a bit of an idea that it's never ever too late to try things, you know, that can pay great dividends to you in a good way. I remember watching a TV series back in Australia called Spartacus, you know, and one of the episodes particularly was a pretty graphic episode, but it stood out particularly because of its cinematic, the way it was shot. It was like really beautiful. The shots were very wide. That particular episode felt like a big movie, you know. And I looked at the director's name at the end of it, and in the days of Twitter, I tweeted that director's name and I said, absolutely love this episode of Spartacus. It's absolutely amazing. And he responded, you know, and which was like really blew me away. Just as a fanboy, I thought, well, that's all I need was that response. But then he followed up by saying, if you're ever in LA, look me up. I've looked at some of your work and it's great. We should do some stuff together. And he was a director who was also a photographer and also was passionate, really, really passionate about music. His name's TJ Scott. So my first trip back to America, I look up TJ and we meet up and become fast friends very, very quickly. We open a gallery in Hollywood together, which became a very, you know, much loved focal event space, and it was designed for music events. And we had some great, you know, bands opening there and playing, you know, launching their CDs. And that was that black on black on black on black space that I used for my photography, where, you know, this image and this image of Jerry Ryan is taken, and this image of Eddie is taken, Edward James Olmos. So yeah, it was like, it really taught me that the other thing in life too is that everything absolutely amazing and wonderful that will happen to you is going to come, those opportunities are going to come from another human being. So what's going to propel you is your ability to do the work, you know. But that's almost secondary, you know. Relationships are everything. Kindness is everything. And that meeting with TJ started the road to where I am now, and that's shooting, you know, in London for Marvel at the age of 60. So I can't begin to emphasize the dramatic flow-on effect that you know, reaching out to people, kindness can have in your life. Because from that meeting with TJ, I ended up working on Star Trek. From working on Star Trek, I met people, got to know Alex Kurtzman, and ended up doing probably what was the ultimate mic drop, one of the ultimate mic drops in my life, and that was working on Star Trek Picard, my favorite show. You know, growing up, I was probably in my, you know, 20s. But I love that show, and I love Patrick Stewart, and I love Jonathan Frakes, all the actors for that. And to be invited on that series, where I was photographing these actors in a beautifully rebuilt set Exact replica of the Enterprise D from the original series. Some of you are going to know what I'm talking about. Some of you are going to think, what a nerd. But to me, that was like, I couldn't believe I was there doing that. And that all came from, tweeting to somebody saying, you're really good at what you do and I love your work, and I think to me that's brought me to a point where I try not to ever ignore anybody who needs help or needs some advice, or a helping hand. I'll always try to pay back that story that is my life. And from the work that I did on Star Trek, got me to work on Marvel, and that's where I am at the moment. So I think that's kind of the journey aspect, which all comes from, acknowledging the people around you, being kind, being inquisitive and interested in what they do, genuinely, and you have to be like that with your subjects as well, because if you're thinking about photography and you're thinking about it as a way to make money, then you've already kind of put a barrier in achieving true joy in what you do. So I'm going to have a sip of my coffee, which, this tells the truth. I can't adult today. But and always maintaining that drive to simplify things rather than complicate them. So to this day, I work against, generally work against the cameras that are shooting on set. I work with simple single light sources as often as I can. And by working against the camera, if you've been on set and everything, a lot of unit stills guys just photograph what the main camera is photographing. And I will always circle around and try to get something different. And when the camera stops rolling, that's when I start shooting even more, rather than saying, okay, now I'm taking a break, because that's when people show their real personality, and that's when you get the beautiful shots that endear them to you. And that's the same when you're doing a portrait shoot. When you take a break, when you say, okay, we're stopping, and you're talking, you're laughing, I just keep shooting, and some of those shots end up being the shot rather than the one that you set up and took. So there has to be this drive to never stop, and you see a lot of photographers, especially at the Leica events and things like that in Hollywood, where they never walk out the door. Like putting on their shoes is the same as putting a camera over the shoulder, and they shoot all the time. I don't quite do that, but I do always make sure I've got a camera with me when I know I'm going somewhere that's even remotely possible of being special. So essentially, you look at this photograph that you see in this life goals. That was another mic drop for me. Blade Runner is my favorite film of all time. It's my desert island movie. And, you have this great ensemble main cast, but Edward James Olmos was the standout person in that movie for me, not to mention his work on Battlestar Galactica. So getting to take this portrait of him in with a Blade Runner-esque vibe to him, having this image used as a non-partisan drive for a voting campaign that was considered the most effective voting campaign in the history of America, for me was just I can't begin to describe being able to collaborate with an icon like Eddie to achieve something like that. So Star Trek Next Generation, Star Trek Picard, and Edward James Olmos, they're kind of like I could just walk away now and not do anything else again moments. But as you know, that can never be. You're always, I'm never happy with anything I do. The minute that you think you've achieved the best shot ever, and you don't need to learn anymore, that's kind of also the road to ruin. The light at the end of the tunnel for us as creatives can never be reached, because we're always going to strive to do better and better. So for me, the simplicity of the single light source is what it's all about. I started with Kino Flows because they were the go-to movie light, and I would always see set photographs, and everything was Kino Flows. And if you don't know, Kino Flows are basically long fluorescent tubes, and they're usually encased, in banks of 2 or 4 or 6 or 8. So TJ and I in this gallery ended up having a bunch of Kino Flow lights. So pretty much everything I shot was with Kino Flows, using these vertical strips that just, you can see that they wrap they just wrap and gently fill the image, and it's just hard to explain. It's a beautiful form of gentle light. As I started to move around more and not be in the studio, I basically, you couldn't lug Kino flows around. So I struggled a little bit with my lighting situation. Um, and would use on-camera flashes every now and again. I've got a cacophony of, I don't know if that's the right word, of square LED panels that I would try, and little tubes and things like that. And I was never really happy with anything. And then, I'm going to go into some non-sponsored advertising at the moment. And then came along these Harlow lights, which are, a continuous light, and they make things that are small and ultra portable to massive studio style lights with, modifiers, the sort that you see on flashes and so forth. And I just fell in love with this product because of the exquisite nature of the build. It has a tactile beauty to it, just like the cameras that I use. I'm a Leica photographer now. I was a Canon guy. And I just found myself a little bit more meticulous in taking less shots that were, more of them were better with my Leicas. And then these lights came along, and I just couldn't believe the quality of the build. Like everything from the little wing nuts that you tighten things with, to the knurling on the knobs, everything was just thought of. The magnetic nature of everything, everything clips on, with magnets, and it can come off easily, and just the beautiful quality and softness of these lights, they became my go-to light. And as you keep on looking down at my light as I'm talking about it, and an extension of that simplicity. I'm on shows that and doing shoots that are of really, really high value, and I'm using my beautiful little mini on-camera light. Lighting myself with with one at the moment as well. But my, just out of interest, if this interests you, my go-to kit is this. Okay, so this is a Leica SL3, but it could be anything. And this is the 20-watt mini. What I love about this is, like I said, everything's magnetic, barn doors, clip on, clip off. It's my continuous light in a portable manner, in a highly portable manner, and the light is so powerful. You take off the diffuser and it can be blinding, but the great thing about these is that they're really intricately adjustable with the white balance, the color temperature, I should say, and the intensity. And then, this is fairly tall, so it's in shooting mode. And then when I'm walking around on set, so I don't clip things, I just put it sideways like that. And sometimes I shoot like that too. But what I really love about this in particular is sometimes, I want that light on the person's face, and, I can shape it with the barn doors, and then there's fall off and the background gets darker, which is, you can see it in my style in those images. And if you go to my website, but what I love, if I wanted a little bit of side lighting, it's got this really cool little quick release here, and then you take that off, and then you're kind of shooting like this, and again, shaping, painting, shaping, painting. But that's my go-to light. I have, I've forgotten the name of it now. I think there's the Maxi, the bigger one, the one that's like about this big, that sits on my camera too. And that's like, I think, could be like a 40 watt or something like that, a apologies for not knowing my technicalities. You can find all that out. Super affordable, intricately, beautifully made. I'm on set, and I can't begin to tell you how many grips and lighting guys and technical guys, just from the beauty of the look of the product, have come up to me and asked me, what the hell is that thing, you know? And then they're taking notes, you know. This another thing I can't emphasize enough is the conversation starter of things, and the way to make friends and icebreaking is having cool looking gear that's beautifully made as well. And I've got my barn door upside down, so let's turn that the right way around. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of in a nutshell my journey and the way I shoot. I apologize in that, you know, if you're after a lot of technical information on this webinar, I don't have it because I don't know a lot of it, you know. I'm from the era of WYSIWYG. You probably, you know, a lot of you are probably too young, but that was an acronym for what you see is what you get. And that's the way I shoot. I see beauty and I shoot it. And if I don't like the way it's looking on the back of the camera, I make my adjustments so that what I see is what I get in the camera. I think the lesson is observation. I would be sitting in a cafe and with somebody having coffee, and I will be struck by the beauty of the light and try to figure out what's diffusing it, what's happening, why is that glass doing that. I'll be in a movie, as I said before, looking, you know, miss the story of the film, and I have to go and see it again, and maybe a third time, because I keep on looking at the eyes. I keep on looking at the eyes and looking at the corners for something to tell me how they've lit that scene, and I try to replicate it in my stills. And then books, you know, never be afraid of looking at pictures of the great photographers and trying to emulate that and copy it, and look at the way the light falls and say, I'm going to try to do that, because you won't be able to do it straight away, but you may be able to get close to it, and that's how you learn, you know. And it being a duplicate, it doesn't matter, because it's not a copy. Eventually you infuse your own soul into the work, and you develop your own style, and style shifts all the time. You know, I went from this super high key, bright, happy light, you know, bright concrete, bright streets and city, to this really dark, insular, coming out of the darkness photographer, you know. And that sort of soulfulness and that intense eye contact is what I started to get known for, more than anything. Just experiment and always look for inspiration everywhere you turn. If you really love what you're doing, you can't walk down the street without observing light all the time. And light for me is really important. My eyesight fractures light, so I'm sort of looking through broken glass a lot of the time, trying to figure things out. So if I can do it, then you youngins with your great eyesight can do it, you know, even better, you know. And I think we're sort of getting close to getting onto a little bit of Q&A time at the moment. And this is probably a better opportunity for me to get into technical aspects, because you can ask me specifically about things and how I do them, and we can go down that route. But I do want to sort of finish up by emphasizing that I really do believe in inspiring people and helping people. So if you, after this, need to know more or want to talk about your work, want me to have a look at your work, you can just DM me through social media, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, and I'd be happy to have a chat and do what I can to sort of you know, boost, you know, whatever you're trying to do in your life as far as photography goes. We're all here to help each other. That's the idea of humanity, and that's what I would like to do. And feel free to reach out to me. Now, if I can figure this out, I'm going to hit the chat. I think it's the chat button. Yeah, I've not done this very often, so. And there's like a lot of chats here. How do I get to the top? Here we go. And I'm going to have to zoom in on this because TJ, you met him at CPG. There's a lot of comments here. I'm just going to try to see if I can get to the very top. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. Okay. Do I do much post work on my pictures from Peter? Yes, I will share those. There's another one there from Christina. I do do post work, and I apologise for not looking at the right place because the camera is on this side, and I'm kind of looking at myself in the video. You know, one thing I find is that when you shoot sort of quickly on set, in particular, the way we see people is very different to the harsh detail sometimes that the camera captures of a person's face. I consider the post work that I do to be an effort to bring back that subject to what I saw them as when I was looking at them. And sometimes, when, it's, when you see the beautiful Rembrandt lighting and that, split of shadow and light, it's, it's really beautiful in paintings, but in photography, shadows, we see all the ripples on the moon when it's an actual partial moon, not a full moon. We see all the craters and the shadows because the light's coming across. And that emphasis on that is sometimes what I remove in Photoshop. If there's, a pimple that's showing a little bit too much, I fail all the time. I'll see this beautiful light, but it'll emphasize baggy eyes, and I'll always bring that back to what I feel is realistic rather than, a over photoshopped Vogue magazine cover sort of thing. So yeah, I do post-production. Sometimes I like to add, the J.J. Abrams light flares. I don't see anything wrong with emphasizing the beauty of what you've done. There are times on set that I've looked at photographs that are just out of the camera amazing. Other times they need a little bit of work. And, as an extension of that, the removal of, because sometimes you have to work so fast, you don't have time to clear your background, and there'll be a can of Coca-Cola there or something like that, and it intersects with a line that's really too hard to Photoshop. So I love the content-aware AI of Photoshop, where I can just circle that can of, or that water bottle, that ugly plastic water bottle, and it gets rid of it. And that's kind of the extent of what I do, is more image repair and failure repair rather than redefining or recreating the photograph. And hi Kieran, there you go. Yes, there's a lot of my stuff on Instagram, and you can, as I said, you can contact me directly through there. From Papa, do you try film like a camera? Yes, I have an M6. I use it as much as I can within reason. I keep on going back to trying to shoot film, but it's very, there's a lot of faith that you put into that because you can't see what you're getting. So it's not my tool of use for a particular job, but it's like, okay, I'm going to snap a few of these shots of Alanis on stage with the film camera, and they may or may not work out because you're shooting one photograph, not 15 frames a second sort of thing. So I love film cameras, love the Leica M cameras. So yes, no, not too many. There are some film photographs, but I will. I'd be happy to sort of directly show you some of the photographs. Oh no, rangefinders are my kryptonite, my Achilles heel. I do, I'm using an M11 at the moment, and it's got the split, or actually it's got the, I don't know what you call it, where you have a ghost image and you bring them together. And I can do it to a degree, but it's so slow that I lose the moment. So with a rangefinder like the monochrome, which I love using, I will use the digital viewfinder on top of it. 10D was my learning camera. You've still got your 10D. That thing was like $7,000 for a 6 megapixel camera or something like that. Crazy stuff. But it opened the door for me. Let me see how we go. I'm going in the wrong direction. I'm going to messages here that are saying, "Hey, yes, we can hear you." You know what? The ambassadorship with Leica, its ambassador is a strange word. I consider myself an aficionado, and Leica through Leica, I've gotten to do some pretty amazing things. But I've never called myself an ambassador. I don't really know what that means. I wear the pin not because I think I'm an ambassador, because I'm passionate about the brand. I'm passionate about the altruistic history of the company, going back to its creators, and the passion for perfection that is still carried through to this day, which I see in the halo lights as well. Certainly being passionate about the brand and being an advocate for the brand, and I've loaned my cameras out to strangers, and strangers have loaned them out to me. Hi, Aaron, just in case you're watching. But I think being an aficionado of the camera and having it on my lips all the time when I'm talking about it certainly has helped. I don't know that there are too many unit stills photographers that use Leicas. My friend Eric is one, and we've worked together a lot in the past, and I'm the other, but I've not, and I'm sure they're out there, but I've, in the many sets that I've been on that I haven't been shooting on, I haven't seen anybody using Leicas. And that is interesting, because, again, not using the word ambassador, but being an aficionado of the camera and using this camera has opened the doors to a lot of friendships, because it's a unique thing. The SL3S in particular, with its blacked out Leica text and it's a beast, and people are curious about what I'm using, and then the people in the know will go, "Oh, you're using Leica," and then all of a sudden you're in this discussion with, the lead actor or the director of a series, because they're a Leica aficionado as well. So in that respect, absolutely being a passionate aficionado of the brand absolutely helps, because it's something that's different, and you should try to differentiate yourself in all ways with the work that you do, and the equipment that you use is really a secondary thing, because first and foremost is being able to connect with that person and then bring a beautiful product to them. My favorite place to take shots no longer exists, sadly. My favorite place to take shots was the 6th Street Bridge, an iconic tunnel that led to the LA River, and on the lip of that river, that tunnel, where you then drove down into the river, you would stand there with this infinity tunnel going into the darkness and a spot in the background, and the subject would be lit by the natural reflector of this 100-foot wide, 500-foot tall concrete pylon. It was a joy. We go back to not having the money for a studio, for lighting, and just being a location photographer all the time when I started coming to America. So I took people to places, Griffith Park Observatory and the 6th Street Bridge. I have a book, excuse me, Men of Science Fiction, which was the first book that I ever published. And pretty much most of the photographs in here are taken at the 6th Street Bridge, and a lot of them are taken at Griffith's Observatory. Like that, for example, is in the river of the 6th Street Bridge, in the tunnel of the 6th Street Bridge. That reflection there is from the concrete pillar across the way. I enjoyed that place so much. Dan Frigel, this is taken at Griffith Park Observatory. Griffith Park is fantastic because it's the opposite to my studio. It's white floors, white concrete. It's just a a massive light box, and then 6th Street Bridge, you know, reflected from concrete. Just finding that simple concrete, you know, as your reflector, always observing. So that's standing on the lip, that's the end of the tunnel there, and that light is coming from the reflection of a concrete pillar holding up the 6th Street Bridge. Griffith Park Observatory. You can really tell that's Griffith Park Observatory. So yeah, it's that and Griffith Park, 6th Street Bridge and Griffith Park were my go-to places. And sadly, they tore down 6th Street Bridge because it was becoming unsafe. So that iconic, you know, I have so many photographs of that iconic place. Again, the great Christopher Heidel, an amazing actor, all taken on the lip of that tunnel at the 6th Street Bridge, in the river of the 6th Street Bridge. So yeah, Griffith Park Observatory, if you're in America, great place to photograph. You can go up there with your client, they won't kick you out. And do really, really cool stuff. New York City has some, you know, New York is an amazing, amazing place. I think I love shooting in the streets of New York. The light is really unique. As I'm looking down, I'm just trying to find an image here that may be in here. There we go. So 7 o'clock in the morning, running down the streets of New York, jumping in the streets of New York. This is Robin Lord Taylor. He was the Penguin in Gotham. So this photograph here, this looks like it's being lit by a beam of light. We were walking down the street and I'm looking at this garage door and there's just this circle of light, like somebody's shining a hot light. Again, you know, observing. And I look up and it's not the sun coming down. It's actually the sun hitting a window and then hitting another window and then hitting a street. And I could see the light was literally just going like this at this speed, you know. So I just sort of just got him to crouch immediately and got that shot. And then you have all those sort of walkways down into below the street, you know, houses, people that have the access from, you know, their brownstones that go below street level, and they've got the steel grates, and then the sun's hitting that, and, you know, just looking for odd, you know, beautiful lighting situations which are available to you in the street and everywhere you go. We're slowly running out of time. One other little bit of natural bounce light is cool. Let's see, how I learned to direct my subjects. You know what? Watching lots and lots, being a movie lover and being inspired to be photographically, you know, work photographically with my work like a movie. I watched a lot of behind the scenes documentaries where you would see directors directing actors. And that's what I inadvertently learnt. And this is what a lot of my subjects say, especially actors. They say, working with you is like working with a director, you know, and they love that, you know. And this is why I love working with actors, because if you say, I want you insular and dark, they know how to do it like that. And they say, I don't want an open smile, but I want you to be happy, you know. And they will be mono in their expression, but their eyes will be glistening with joy, you know. And so I take cues from directors that I see on sets that I'm working on, and that's how I work with my actors. Just watch a lot of BTS and see what the, you know, how, you know, you see the actor and the director with their heads down in conversation, talking about how to get that expression. And that's how I work. And actors will, you know, people, they say it's like photographing with you is like working with a director. And the second thing they say, and I love it, you know. So again, get your inspiration from everywhere. We'll watch lots of BTS stuff, watch documentaries about photographers, get books about photographers, and always keep your eyes open for gorgeous light. That is good advice. The last a bit of advice I would say is, if you've got a lot of photographs that you like, this is my business card holder. I've shown this. People have seen me do this at the Leica Gallery where I've had exhibitions and so forth. These are my business cards. not the business card that people throw out. A lot of people are doing this now after seeing this. I basically bought a Canon printer. It's not that expensive, and I started printing my photographs on Hamill metallic paper and putting my QR code on the back, and my company information on the back as well. So that's my business card. So you're handing over a business card to people that they're never ever going to throw away, and the reason they'll never throw it away is because you hand them the book and you say pick one that you like, and then inadvertently you're just saying, oh, you take my card, but you're getting them to inadvertently look at your portfolio. And this is what people do, and they most of the time say, I just can't pick one, so you let them pick a couple. So if you can get these in 50 pages like this, or 20 pages, or 10 pages, even if you've got one if you've got 10 beautiful photographs that you're proud of, get them printed or print them yourself, and never leave home without it. That's what I do. And finally, as I said, one of the things that I was doing in a lot of TV shows was working to print books, and I'll just show you. This is the final mic drop for me, was doing this amazing photo book of Star Trek Picard. And I'll show you an example of why you never stop shooting when the camera stops rolling, because then you get shots like this, which don't happen during takes, right? You just get beautiful moments that people who've worked together for 30 years are sharing, and you're giving them the best memories in the world, and you're capturing something that nobody has seen before. So I've gone in a lot of directions with this, but one thing, like I said before, I start working harder when we're not supposed to be shooting. That's kind of the key to a lot of the success that I have of getting really beautiful and personal images. Okay, unless there are any more questions, I'll have a quick look here. Sunrise or sunset? Sunset, because I don't like getting up early in the morning. But they're both beautiful. But sunset is a little bit easier to manage because you can prepare in the light, and you can see as it wanes, you can keep shooting, you shoot faster and faster and faster. And then when it sinks, there's this thing where there's kind of like this blue light thing, where like a little bit after the sun has gone beneath the horizon, there's this re-kick of light, which is like a blue sort of light. So I really love that time of day. I love sunset shooting when I'm doing natural light photography. You know what? Luck is, there was an old saying that luck is preparation meets opportunity. So if you use that equation, absolutely. More than luck, always say relationships, always say relationships. That is everything. Go out of your way to know people. You just never know who you DM on Instagram that will actually reply to you and reach out a hand. And I always like to reward people's vigor at chasing that dream. For me, it's always a sad thing that I've had people, like I was a shop assistant, and I've had those shop assistants who may know of me, may recognize my work, and they will ask to be an attachment or to learn to be an assistant, which I'm always for. And then that's the first thing they ask. And then, and I always believe everybody should get, now they're, you can afford it, should get paid for their work. But it's always sad to, have the second question be, how much do I get paid? So I think you just have to be willing to do whatever it takes to learn, and reach out to the people that you respect and admire as photographers and as directors, as I always do. I'm like a online stalker. The amount of people I'm a fan of that I DM and never hear back from because they get a million. But that one, like TJ, a person who was a huge aficionado of her work. It's a stunning, incredible actor, Jerry Ryan. Long before I worked on Picard, we managed to connect through Instagram. She looked at my page, through some DMs, and then I just said we should do a shoot together one day, and we have this amazing, studio shoot and outdoor streets of Hollywood shoot that we did together. So my greatest inspirations for photography, and I'll have to make that last one because we're 4 minutes over. I would have to say Lindbergh, and because of the incredible darkness of the shaping of that light, his shadows just beautiful. And Anton Corbijn, he's the one that really, because I was such a big U2 fan, once I started looking at my Anton Corbijn books, which were U2 books. They weren't Anton Corbijn books in those days, but then they became Anton Corbijn books when I got interested in photography. I was looking at the beauty and the connection and the slight motion and the perfection and imperfection. That's what was like, I want to be like this guy when I grow up. And that's what got me on the road, was having a goal to be like somebody, but then developing my own style. So what person would you like to photograph? Well, okay, that's going to be my last question, because I'm going to give away my fanboy esque nature. As far as I think it would have to be, I've already photographed some of the, like I always wanted to photograph Alanis Morissette, and I got to photograph her. She's the greatest rock star on the planet ever. That was just in the music industry. That's mic drop for me. To do, I got Edward James Olmos. I think to do on my to-do list would have to be, there are 3 guys, and I err towards brooding male photography. Tom Cruise is one, because he's the last of the great Hollywood superstars. I would love to work with him. His nature as a meticulous, incredible professional is something that I really attached to. As a super fan of just being, a Superman guy, Henry Cavill, I think that's my number one. I just would love to photograph Henry Cavill and Keanu Reeves, those 3. And I have shot Keanu Reeves before, but not as my subject. So they're the 3. I think the triangle is Henry Cavill, Tom Cruise, and Keanu Reeves. There you go. Okay, guys. I hope you got something out of it. As I said, reach out, DM me if you need any advice or any help, or you want to see something specific that we spoke about. I'm happy to specifically talk about lighting on specific photographs if you're really curious. Funnily enough, I don't know if you can still get this. I have some at home, and if you eventually reach out when I go back to Australia for Christmas, my Men of Sci-Fi book, I'm tend to give these away more than anything these days. In the back of this book, every photograph that's in here, this is how much, even in 2016 when I did this, how much I want to educate people. There are camera settings and focal lengths and apertures and shutter speeds of every photograph in this book. There will be a Women of Sci-Fi, and I'll do the same thing for that, so eventually we'll get there. Thanks again, guys. Reach out if you need anything, and hopefully this has been of some pleasure and use to you. And we will catch you online. I'm sure I'll get a few messages via Instagram or Twitter or the Facebook, any one of those crazy places. Love you all, and thanks again, guys. Bye.